Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome indeed. We are glad you're here. We're coming to you today again, and as always, from world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut, home of Wilbur Antonucci, the world famous chef who invented the banana and the anchovy pizza. And if you haven't tried that, you're in for a real treat. And I love the expression on your face right now, Shell. I'm also happy to introduce my guest today. She is Shell Sawyer, and she is the author of the book, You Are Not Alone, Your Guide for When Divorce is on Your Doorstep. And we will get into that, I'm sure. But first, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. You and I actually met at a book signing, and I got to know a little bit about your story, but for the benefit of folks who are joining us either live or will catch this recording later, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to be where you are, and how and why you wrote the book?
Sure. So like you said, Mark, my name's Shell Sawyer. I own a business called Finding Strength with Shell. So I decided after my own divorce and once the fog lifted, that I wanted to help other people going through this very difficult time. And I wanted them to find the strength to do that. So hence the name that I came up with. And I wanted to be better. Like, I went through a mediation process and I didn't like it very much. I didn't feel like there was anybody helping me make decisions. I didn't even know what the right questions were to ask. I had never been through divorce, like that before. So I decided that I wanted to help other people. So I do mediation now, and I help people make good decisions. I also am a personal divorce guide. So I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. My background is in finance. I have over 20 years experience in financial services industry and my master's in accounting. And so the CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, was like a perfect fit for me to help people make good financial decisions in their divorce.
And by the way, I'm asking this question as someone who has been divorced. I may say something about that later. I had no idea anything like a CDFA existed.
Mm-hmm.
Given the fact that you had a finance background first, did you know anything until you were divorced about CDFA?
I didn't know about it until after I was divorced. Honestly, I was like, once the fog lifted and I was home alone because my daughter was with her dad half of the time, I was like, how can I make this better? How could I have done better? And I found the Certified Divorce Coach program, and I was like, this is great. I'd never heard about this. I didn't know there was such thing as certified divorce coaches. And then during that program, I found out about the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. And I'm like, I didn't know this existed either. And this is like amazing, right? But I think everybody should have a CDFA on their team to help them make good decisions, right? To help them walk through the process. So it's hard to get it out there. A lot of people say to me, like you just said, I didn't even know that existed. So, yeah.
And bearing in mind that I was divorced in 1989, I don't know if any of those things existed, but when you found out about certified divorce coaches,
Mm-hmm.
did you just learn about them, or did you actually work with one?
I didn't. I didn't know anything about that. I wish that there was some way, shape, or form. Like I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I didn't even know to ask the question. Certified divorce coach. Like I found out about all of that afterwards, and I'm like, oh, I so wish I had somebody like this. And people say that to me all the time. If they've already been divorced, they're like, oh, I wish I knew about that or had someone like you when I got my divorce, right? I hear about that so often.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember a program that used to be on television called LA Law.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I
What's
remember sitting in the courtroom and thinking three things. One, I felt like I was in an episode of LA Law. Two, it
Mhm.
was such a hideous experience that I very clearly thought I would not wish this on anyone. And then
Yes.
three, in some weird way, I thought I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for like having it in the memory bank or something. And
Mhm.
in anticipation of this show, the very first thing I wrote was, what don't we know? So
Mhm.
in the work that you do, what do you find, if there's any single answer to this question, what do you
Mhm.
find that people are least aware of?
I think there's a couple different things, right? But the first thing that kind of popped into my mind is people don't know what the process is until kind of divorce is like on their doorstep, right? Hence the name of my book. They don't, most people don't want to know, right? Especially because like it's like divorce has cooties. So you don't want to like know about anybody else's divorce until it's on your doorstep. And then you're like, how does this all work? Like, what do I need to do? Do I just go and hire the first attorney, that somebody referred me to? Probably not, right? I'm a I'm a big planner myself, like in general. Okay, I have to have a plan. Writing my book, I needed a plan. I'm, I'm a January baby, so I'm a Capricorn. I think that's part of, I think so. I think that's what I'm going to blame it on. But I feel like you plan for a wedding, right? You plan to have a baby, usually. You plan for a lot of different things. You got to plan for your divorce too, right? I think. And I think that that's where the CDFA comes in and is helping you get ready, get prepared, get organized for that journey ahead.
You know what? That's actually something that I wrote down too. But I wasn't sure that I actually wanted to get to it, and I'll tell you why. I'm 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 not a believer in things like hedged bets. And when I hear about people with um, prenup agreements, I think,
Oh,
they're kind of hedging their bets a little bit. Um,
yeah.
and I also am coming to believe more and more in the idea that well, two things actually. The idea that you get what you attract.
Mhm.
And I
I
also
like that.
firmly believe that I am completely capable of putting the whammy on myself. So when you say when you say we should plan for divorce first, the first thing I want to say is I think that's just smart. But how do you do that? How do you go about that without putting the whammy on yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe I could clarify this a little bit, right? Because a thought came into my head. I don't mean like plan for that rainy day to happen. I mean more if you're contemplating divorce and you know that it's something that you want to do, like you've been thinking about it for a little while and you know that eventually you're going to want to do mediation or you're going to want to do come to a CDFA first, and then we'll help you get there and get you on the right track and the right path forward, right? I don't want everybody to plan like they are going to get divorced because hopefully they won't. They're not going to, right? They're not going to touch the divorce 40%, 45% of people get divorced. If you don't think it's going to be you, don't go planning for it and hire a CDFA. But if you're thinking that you're really like you and your husband are on that track, then let's talk. Does that make more sense?
It does make more sense. And, I was smiling because I have visions of, a couple on their honeymoon, and one of them's just sitting there making notes, and the other one says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm making a plan for
I'm
divorce."
planning.
Um, but what
I
you were
think I'm
just
with you
saying,
with the prenups too, even though, like, I think
there's,
if I ever did it again, I'd have a prenup. But like, yeah, I think it's almost like you're hedging, right? You're like, hey, it's a 50-50 chance that I'm gonna wind up there. So let's make sure,
yeah, it's
right?
definitely a little hinky, I guess I would say. But
Yeah.
what you were just saying made me curious. Does whatever you do in your practice, and I presume this would be the coaching part, um, but does whatever you do help people to select attorneys? And when you first mentioned the idea, I was thinking about doctors, and I absolutely love my doctors. I don't want to be misinterpreted about that, but I always get second opinions.
Hmm.
Is there any part of your practice that has to do with, I said selecting first, this time I'm going to say interviewing attorneys?
Yes, I think it's important to interview lots of different people, right? I have suggestions of people who are trusted partners of mine that, I know that they've done good work for other clients, right? So if whether you're thinking about doing mediation, maybe collaborative law, or going the traditional attorney route, I do have trusted attorneys that I can refer you to, but I think you should always do a consultation first and see if you're a good fit, right? That's, yeah,
Yeah.
important.
I didn't have any idea of any kind of a process like that, along with the fact that I was young at the time, and my attorney was a woman who was recommended by an uncle of my mother who was a probate judge. I'd never even met that guy, let alone the attorney that he recommended. And I was absolutely clueless. And, in case, and I'm sure you can say more about this, but in case there are folks in our audience who um, may end up going through this, one of the things I found completely unnerving was how much time I spent either by myself or with my soon to be ex while the attorneys were off talking to each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because maybe it was my inner control freak or something, but I was thinking, shouldn't I have a say in what's going on in that room over there?
What are they talking about? Are they
Yeah,
talking about me?
right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They should be if they're billing me.
So that is part of what made me curious about if you have anything to do with the selection process of attorneys.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say hopefully I don't have any control over that. It's more just like I know a few of them and have seen their work and hear from my clients like good, bad, indifferent. Um, and then like I'll recommend you if you have done well by my previous clients, right? I'll recommend you. But I'll always tell my clients, especially if they come to me first and we're working through getting all their finances together, like we're developing a partnership, my client and
Mhm.
I. And I think we developed some trust in each other. And so they trust me to like recommend someone. But just because I think that they're good, they might not be good for you, right?
Yeah.
Because I think having somebody that communicates with you well and knowing how to communicate and kind of setting up um something for success, right? For the two of you, you want somebody that is going to be right by your side and advocate for you if you're going
Yeah,
that
I
traditional
completely
route.
agree with that. I love the idea that you feel like you become partners with your clients. Um, Two questions. One, do those relationships that you form during the divorce coaching process,
Mhm.
do they endure? And and is that at least at times difficult? And the reason I ask the question is whenever as a younger person I thought about becoming a psychologist or something, I would think,
Mhm.
no, 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 because I would never be able to leave that stuff in the office. I'd be thinking about it all the time. Do you find that?
I think about it all the time. Yes. Especially, I'm a mediator as well. And I find that to be a very difficult profession because even though mediation is supposed to be amicable, it doesn't necessarily mean they're kind to one another. And it also doesn't necessarily mean they're not grieving. They are grieving, right? And sometimes that
Yeah.
grief can look like anger. And here I am, a third party in this. There's been times that I have um, worried about my own safety in the situation. So yeah, I do bring it home with me, and I try like with my clients that are going through a divorce. I'm always like, you need to have self-care. You need to take what I wish I wish I took my own advice sometimes and got that
Don't
self-care.
we
Like I
all?
said, that we I know. Yeah,
Do you
I
do
need an
you
accountability partner.
we all need those.
Yeah.
Um, do you find that as emotions go in divorce, that grief is overlooked or at least underestimated?
So often, I don't think people realize the grief that I think there's two things, right? The people are going through it, they don't realize that that's what they're experiencing, right? Is grief.
That is true.
Um, yeah. And then maybe the people who are witnessing it or supporting them, they don't realize it's grief either. They think maybe they're being irrational or maybe they're, overly emotional. They don't realize that what's happening is they're going through a grieving process, the grief of their marriage. And they definitely fall into that. Yeah.
Um, you just made me think of a distinction that I don't believe I've ever thought about before. When you were talking about people who want to be helpful or supportive, the distinction that just occurred to me is the one between sadness and grief.
Mm.
And I think the people and God bless them, by the way, um, who want to be there for us, help us, support us
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of the process, recognize or believe they recognize our sadness. But it occurs to me
Mm-hmm.
because of what you're saying, grief is much more profound than that. And I also think, not just in divorce, but anytime you experience a loss, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's a change and even if it's a deliberate change,
Yep.
you're going to grieve because there's a loss.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is aside from the distinction I just made, that recognition of loss and grief is a very recent revelation for me.
Yeah. I think maybe for me too, I didn't realize what I was experiencing when I was going through my divorce was grief, right?
Yes.
But then when I put a name to it, I was like, oh, like that makes so much sense, right? I mean, but you could have grief in something, like you said, just loss, like loss of a job, you know. Um, but like grief with a marriage, I think you only use that term when you have like a loss of a loved one
Yep.
or, but it's very similar. It is.
Yeah, it is.
Especially if you don't want the divorce, I would say it's very similar because you're grieving a loss of somebody, but they're still there. And you might still have to interact with them, right? But you're grieving them. Yeah.
One of the things that absolutely boggles my mind is people who decide that they're going to be divorced, and yet for some period of time cohabitate.
Oh.
That is just not fathomable to me.
You mean after they're divorced, they're cohabitating? Or during?
There are some people I know who have done that, and then there are some people I know who've done it through remarkably contentious proceedings.
Yes.
And I don't know how they do that.
It's hard. I did it through my own divorce. We decided to sell the house, but financially, I couldn't move on without that sale happening, right? So we all stayed in the house until well after. I think I was divorced in March, and we were still living together in July of that same year. And of course, separately, it was a big enough house we could do that. But I see that a lot with my clients is financially, it's difficult to not cohabitate, right? So financially, emotionally, it's, so hard.
Yeah, just even thinking about it feels like torture.
Yeah, because you want to move on, right? So bad. You want it just to be done. And you're willing to, beg, borrow, steal to do that. But here you are having to, after work, go home, act like you are still a married couple when, you no longer are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're coming up on a break, and another these shows just fly. They all do. I wish they didn't. So I'm gonna save the next question that I want to ask you, and at least according to my time, we're a minute early, but I would like to take that break right now so that we can get into the next topic seamlessly. So please stay with us. We will be back in 3 minutes.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I just have to mention here that I'm struck by the irony that we're here discussing divorce on a station that promotes universal love. I suppose they're different sides of a coin. What I wanted to ask before the break, Shell, was I did ask you if you thought, by and large, that grief was overlooked. What about guilt? And I have to ask that because I think that's the one emotion that I least anticipated. And it was brutal.
Yeah. I think that's a part of the grief, though, right? I actually wrote about that a little bit in my book. I talked about grief, and I renamed them because they weren't the same as when you're going through death, right? The death of someone. They looked a little different, right? That guilt is part of it, right? Maybe some shame, right, is added in there. Anger is really present in divorce. But even the bargaining, right? I remember that was something that I did when my husband wanted a divorce and asked. I wanted to know what I did wrong. That was my big thing was how did this happen? I've always been a big process improvement person, even with myself, always looking to learn and educate myself and make myself better. And here I was like, what did I do that, at the time deserved this? Why didn't he love me anymore? And I wanted to know, was I not a good mom? Was I not a good wife? Did I not do the things that he needed? That was my bargaining, that I would do anything to change it. Now I know that was a gift to me. And I'm glad I wasn't able to change it because I wouldn't be the person I am today. And so I'm thankful for that gift. But yeah, guilt can be a really big thing. I think my ex-husband felt that guilt too, especially when I'm sitting there crying and, almost begging him. I can't even believe I said, but yes, that's where I was, right? And there was a lot of guilt there. I think he probably gave me some things in the settlement because he felt a little guilty too, even though he, continued on. But yeah.
I absolutely agree with what you said about it can turn into a gift. Had I not been through what I had been through, I wouldn't have even recognized my wife, Anne. I wouldn't have understood who she was or what she was or what a remarkable
And
person.
you feel like you do now?
Yeah, I do. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh, yes. And I'm so grateful. But another thing you said just made something else occur to me. I had never thought before about the relationship, if there is one, between guilt and blame.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and I
Mhm.
wonder if guilt isn't to some degree the result of blaming ourselves for something
Mm,
which might not have been our own fault and or over which we actually had no control.
well, yeah, no control, right? Because we can only control ourselves, right? We can't control anybody else, even our husband or wife, right? You can't control them. You can't make them into somebody different, somebody you want them to be, right? Maybe.
Yeah, well,
I
yeah.
mean, every situation is different, and I think that that's why maybe we've never put the word grief to divorce because they are so different and everyone acts differently. How I acted in my divorce is not going to be the next person's, right? Um, just
I it
yeah.
I've been writing lately um for reasons that we just don't have time to explain right now, but about the relationship. I don't even want to say difference. The relationship between expectations and intentions.
Hmm.
And I don't think those two things are separable because it's not clear to me. Maybe it's possible.
Hmm.
It's not clear to me. You know what? I'm going to completely personalize this. I don't
Okay.
think I can separate my intentions from my expectations
Mm. Hmm.
because,
That's interesting.
yeah, I wouldn't even know how to begin to define something that I want if there weren't an expectation.
Hmm.
And so if I intentionally go about getting that thing, that
Hmm.
intentionality is a product of expectation, isn't it? Or
Sure.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
just thinking myself in circles. I don't know.
Um, I've never thought about something like that. I know, like, when I do mediation, right? We talk about expectations. I want them to know, like, I want to know what their expectations are so that we can incorporate it into their agreement, right? But I
Mm.
guess those are their intentions as well, right?
Yeah,
No. Or are
it
they like, could you share your expectation, but not your intention? Your intention might be something else, like the motivation behind it. I don't know.
I don't know either. No, this is actually quite fascinating to me
Yeah.
because if you didn't have any expectation
Hmm.
of achieving something and
Hmm.
saying, I intend to do this, what's the motivation?
Yeah. And that's your intention, right? Is your
Yeah,
motivation behind it.
yeah,
Yeah. You might not share it, but it's there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've probably said this on the show before, but I had a conversation long time ago, more than 25 years ago, with a woman who actually was my boss at the time. And we got along famously, but we were having lunch together once, and she said, "We're all victims of our own values." And I said, "No, no, actually, we're not. We're all victims of our own expectations."
Mhm.
And sometimes I think, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman this morning and said to him that I believe things happen when they're supposed to. And
Yeah. I do
maybe
too.
that kind of a belief is the only way we can let go of our expectations.
Mm.
I truly don't know, but it fascinates me.
I think sometimes thinking that everything happens for a reason helps me if something doesn't go the way I planned it to, right? So changing those expectations is like, okay, that there's a reason behind this. Maybe I don't know what that reason is at the moment, but I'm going to find out. And so I have
Absolutely.
to kind of alter how my expectations are. And those definitely change your values too. I feel like my values have changed over my lifetime, based on things that have, those triumphs or, those trials, they change your values too.
Yeah, I agree. And I also learned, I too believe, by the way, that everything happens for a reason. Or maybe another way to say that is, and I agree with you, we can't know it all, but
Yeah.
everything that's supposed to happen actually does. And the thing I learned that had to be factored into that belief is patience.
Mm,
And I think maybe patience is a way to help us contend with our expectations.
mm,
Maybe we can never get rid of them, but maybe we can be a little more patient about them.
mm.
Um, I would like to make another segue here, if I could. Um, in the description of the show,
Mhm.
this show, um, I wrote, Shell's dad was her hero. He paid bills at the kitchen table, telling her everything he was doing. She was fascinated by his organization, his green ledger paper, and his pens. So I have a couple of questions, and if you want to tell me that something is none of my business, please feel free.
No, I'm an open book.
Did your parents stay married?
My parents did, yeah. They probably should. Looking back, I saw that there was, yes, probably some issues there that, but they did. They stayed married for, my dad had Alzheimer's, and I think it's 54 years they were together.
So I'll tell you why I asked the question, and I will
Mhm.
tell you my parents are both gone now, but they were married for
Mine too.
more than 65 years.
Ooh, wow,
N-
that's great.
But the big question is, and this is the one I want to ask you too, and I think you've already answered it in part. Were they happy? If somebody asked me if my parents were happy all the time, ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I could answer that one definitively.
Yeah. Not all the time. Definitely not all the time. There was a time where I would have thought they probably should have gotten divorced. Or maybe not divorced, right? But they did they work through it? I don't know. After after they retired, I would say they were happy. They came together, they were traveling, they were doing all the things, right? And I would say at that time they were happy. But in the middle there, life is hard, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
There's obviously the pressures that everyone
Mhm.
endures in
Mhm.
just living, and who knows what their demons might have been. And
Yeah.
I certainly don't. I suspect some things,
Yeah, I
but I
suspect some
certainly
things too. Yeah.
but I don't know what I don't know everything that they lugged around.
Hmm.
Um, and I think maybe what you said of your parents might have been true of mine too. When 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 they finally retired, and I put it that way because my dad retired, and then he essentially got recruited uh, to run for first selectman in the town where
Oh,
they lived. So he ended up doing that, and
it's the
that
second career,
yeah,
right? A lot of
and
times.
truth to
Yeah.
be told, that again, a very long story, which we don't have time for. That job absolutely beat him up.
Oh,
And I was
I
positive
could
that
see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it either.
No.
Um,
Mm-mm.
I'm convinced that he could have won re-election without even running a campaign, but
Mm.
instead they moved from Connecticut to South Carolina. They just,
Probably a
I
good
mean,
move. Yeah.
quite literally got out of Dodge.
Not doing that again.
No, no, he didn't want, but I think they
No.
were. I think after they
Yeah.
retired, I do think they were happier.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to
Life
take
was
our
less
second
stressful.
break now because,
Okay.
again, I would very much like to make a segue. So once again, we will take a commercial break. We will be back in 3 minutes. Please stay with us.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to DreamVision7Radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final segment. It doesn't even make me comfortable to say that. Given the fact, Shell, that our parents had long marriages, and regardless of what their motivations might have been, in your practice, what do you think has changed? And I guess what I mean is generationally, what do you think has changed?
The ability to not have to stay in an unhealthy relationship. I think that has changed. I think that in our parents' generation, and not that like all of them are this way, right? It's just that if there was any kind of abuse, most women had to stay in it. Regardless, financial, emotional, physical, they had to stick with it. There was no way to get out. They weren't, a lot of them were housewives. They didn't make their own money. There's fear of financials. Like, it wasn't easy to do. And not that divorce is not easy. I think you mentioned that before. It is not easy, no matter what anybody says, right? It's not that it's made it easier. It's just made it more maybe acceptable. And the process has been, you're able to get one, right? Hopefully that continues. And women don't have to stay in unhealthy relationships anymore if it's not good for them. They can teach their children what a healthy relationship looks like, and we can break generational cycles by allowing divorce to be something that, not that, and I'm not saying that my parents would have definitely gotten divorced. I don't know that, right? But
I don't either.
yeah, and that could have just been something, I was thankful that they worked together to work through things. But allowing women have like more access, right? They can make their own income now, right? Before, my mom was, I think she did travel agent. She was a travel agent, but she didn't start till I was like, I think 12. I think she made like $16,000 a year. She wouldn't have been able to live on her own. Granted, there's child support she could have gotten, potentially some alimony, but I'm sure she stayed for reasons too, right? Or my dad stayed. My dad stayed. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you as a follow-up to my previous question, if whatever has changed is good or bad. And I think in your response, you've at least suggested some positive things. And I do think that's right. And I will acknowledge the fact that through someone that I worked with, I've learned more about abusive relationships and domestic violence than I think I ever really wanted to know. So
Yeah.
I would never, ever suggest that a woman
No.
should stay in an abusive relationship, whether that abuse is emotional or physical or whatever.
Right.
But
And I don't want to say that it only happens to women. I don't mean that. But
yeah,
I think it's, predominantly, right?
okay. So spousal
Yeah.
abuse.
Spousal abuse, that's a better, or intimate partner violence.
There you go.
I'm on the board
Interestingly
of
enough,
directors at the Interval House, and we call it intimate partner violence. So
yeah, and believe it or not, I've written about that too, but that's another story.
literally.
So given the fact that I'm a word guy, a language guy,
Mhm.
and maybe, no, not maybe, and stubborn too. I wonder if we've lost something. And here's what I mean.
Mhm.
I wonder if, going back to language, we have become inclined to take vows more lightly. And I wonder if we've become conditioned to endure less. And maybe that's made us less patient. And again, I don't mean to suggest for a second
Mhm.
that anybody should have to endure anything abusive. No.
Yeah. I mean, even I, I I think that we don't communicate well. That's definitely like a common theme I see with my couples is that communication, whether, I don't know if it was there in the first place or if it's something that deteriorated along the way, right? Communication is definitely like broken down. And maybe we don't like apply the same kind of like, I was talking about process improvement before. We like do things to make ourselves better in our jobs and, in our life, but do we do anything to make our marriage better and communication better? There's probably not a lot of that, right? And how do you go from like it's breaking down and try to do something about it? What's that first step? And maybe couples therapy helps you in that regard, right? If you choose to go that direction. But I also see there's other aspects, right? That it's not just intimate partner violence. It can be infidelity. Like I would never want anybody to put up with that, like they can choose for themselves, right? Whether they want to or not. But if they feel like that's a breaking point, that, I don't want them staying in an unhealthy relationship that like there's been infidelity just because they have to work through it.
I've never thought about this either, but infidelity actually strikes me as a kind of violence. It's
Yes.
it's a violation of something that at least was supposed to be inviolable and really profound
And sacred, right?
and sacred.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as two people having a bond together and trusting one another, that's like a broken trust. That some people, that's hard to recover from, right?
Yeah. That's the violent part in my estimation.
Yes. The broken trust. Anytime there's, even if it's not infidelity, but a broken trust is hard to recover from, right? Yeah. So I think when that happened in the past, right, some people maybe had to just like suck it up, unfortunately, right? Because they couldn't move forward in any other way, which that's the bad part. Yeah.
Yeah. The analogy that jumps to mind when I think about that is somebody who, and frankly, I don't know anybody who'd be willing to do this, but somebody who would sue to get a job back. If you had to sue to get your job back, would you go back?
No.
I wouldn't
trust them anymore, right?
Exactly.
If there was a reason there that you felt like you needed to sue them in order to, I would say, just get the compensation. Don't go back to that company because it probably could never be good ever again, right? Maybe.
Yeah, and that again causes it to occur to me that trust needs to go both ways.
Yeah.
If I had to sue to get my job back, I would feel like I was always having to look over my shoulder. The other side of the coin is, I would think my employer would feel exactly the same way. And I don't want to be misunderstood on this one. I am no Dr. Phil fan, but I have heard him say to people, if he'll do it with you, he'll do it to you.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah. The leopard doesn't change their stripes, right? Or the spots.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So I'm gonna leave this program still unresolved about whether we've gained or lost something, because I really do think there is something very admirable about what our parents did, and about their whatever it is. I'm going to say their ability. I don't know what it was, but to be able to maintain a relationship like that, because as we both know, and this is ridiculously self-evident, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
And, except for what we both agreed that our parents probably found in their retirement, it's not easy for quite a long time.
Yeah. And maybe they figured out I would, obviously my parents are gone, so I would love to know what that special sauce is, right? Like, how did you make it work for so long?
And I'll tell you one other thing that's slightly lighter. When I knew that I was going to be divorced, it was shortly after my parents 40th wedding anniversary. And nobody in my family had ever been divorced before. And when I tell you that the prospect of telling my parents that I was going to be divorced had me sweating bullets, I am understating grossly.
Yeah,
You know what they said to me?
What?
We have no idea what the hell took you so long.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No, you
Mark?
could have knocked me over with a feather. I couldn't believe it.
Right. That's funny.
So-
All that. You worked yourself all up.
Well, here we go, right?
Yeah.
Expectations again.
Expectations, yeah.
Expectations are
You
no
like
good, I'm
that
telling you.
expectation.
So
That
I do want to remind folks before we go. Shell's book is You Are Not Alone, Your Guide for When Divorce is on Your Doorstep. I actually love the idea that it's kind of a visitor. There you go. And it is available on Amazon. So please go and look for it. And if people want to be in touch with you, Shell, what are the best ways for them to go about that?
The best way is through my webpage, www.findingstrengthwithshell.com. I know that's a mouthful, but findingstrengthwithshell.com. You can set up a consultation, you can email me. That's where I am.
Okay, and I will also point this out to folks because I live on LinkedIn. They can
I'm on
also
LinkedIn too.
find you on LinkedIn.
And Facebook and Instagram. Yep.
Okay, very
All
good.
the above.
And Shell, I'm so grateful that you were willing to join me today. I suspected this would be terrific because after we met at the book signing, we did connect for lunch one day, and that was just a blast.
But yeah, we definitely hit it off, and I'm sad that it's already over.
Okay,
I
well,
can't keep talking to you, Mark.
this is actually why God invented second times.
Yes.
So I'm sure that as we continue to get to know each other better, we will do this again.
Yes. I
So-
look forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Of course.
And for all of us who joined us
thank you
today,
for having me.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you for having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure, actually. And for those of you who are good enough to join us today, I will be back 2 weeks from today with another show, and I hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.